Hello, friends. I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. How are you doing today? I'm so glad we can spend some time together. Let's get started with our program. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite periodicals, the Old Farmer's Almanac. We will learn about the history, share some fun facts, and you know I love to look at art together. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. I always like to start by thanking Lynn Brennan and the folks from AgeSpan for hosting this event. I'd also like to thank Right at Home Boston North, the award-winning home health agency, for sponsoring this program and helping us all to stay safe, healthy, and connected. An almanac is an annual publication listing a set of current information about one or multiple subjects. It includes information like weather forecasts, farmers' planting dates, tide tables, and other data, often arranged according to the calendar. Celestial figures and various statistics are found in almanacs, such as the rising and setting times of the sun and moon, dates of eclipses, hours of high and low tides, and religious festivals. These events noted in an almanac may be tailored for a specific group of readers, like farmers, sailors, or astronomers. But most familiar to most of us are probably these two almanacs. The Old Farmer's Almanac is an almanac containing weather forecasts, planting charts, astronomical data, recipes, and articles. Topics include gardening, sports, astronomy, folklore, and predictions on trends in fashion, food, home technology, and living for the coming year. Published every September, the Old Farmer's Almanac has been published continuously since 1792, during George Washington's first term as president, making it the oldest continuously published periodical in North America. The Old Farmer's Almanac publishes 4 editions per year and has an annual circulation of around 3 million copies. The Farmer's Almanac is an annual American periodical that has been in continuous publication since 1818. It's published by Geiger of Lewiston, Maine, and it provides long-range weather predictions for both the U.S. and Canada. It also provides calendars and articles on topics such as the full moon dates, folklore, natural remedies, and the best days to do various outdoor activities. Each year's new edition is released at the end of August and contains 16 months of weather predictions. Most editions of this almanac include a human crusade, something advocating for a change in some accepted social practice or custom. Like previous crusades have included how much daylight are we really saving, which was a recommendation for a revised daylight savings time schedule in 2007. And in 2003, they urged for a kinder, gentler nation, urging readers to exercise more common courtesy. It seemed to me when I first started researching this program that they had a lot in common as far as the data and the weather and the tides and the farming and the folklore. So I wondered, what are some of the main differences between these two popular booklets? Well, I found out that the Old Farmer's Almanac that you see here, what we now know has the yellow cover and the word old in it. First of all, it was the oldest one developed. And the founder, Robert B. Thomas, believed that the Earth's weather was influenced by magnetic storms on the surface of the sun. He developed a secret weather prediction, it is said, that was based on that belief and locked in a black box in the Almanac's offices. The accuracy rate, they say, is about 80%, although many modern meteorologists have their suspicions. Many other almanacs were being published at that time. Thomas's became an immediate success. In fact, by the second year, circulation had tripled from 3,000 to 9,000. By the way, back then, that almanac cost about 9 cents, 6 pence. In 1818, the Farmer's Almanac that I mentioned from Maine was founded and established. Now, this takes into account things like sunspot activity, the position of the planets. The editors deny using any type of computer satellite tracking equipment, weather lore, or groundhog. Sorry, Phil. The only person who knows the exact formula that the Almanac's weather is predicted by goes by the pseudonym Caleb Weatherby. And guess what? They also claim an accuracy rate of 80 to 85%. But just like with the old Farmer's Almanac, many modern meteorologists don't think so. For our program today, I'm really focusing on the old Farmer's Almanac, which to me is the classic. It's the one that my parents bought every year, and even as a child, I loved the little tidbits of humor and ads. You may recognize this guy on the right here. It's Walter Cronkite, enjoying his almanac. Now, although many other almanacs, like I said, were being published at the time, Thomas's upstart became an immediate success. And except for the very first issue in 1793, the Old Farmer's Almanac has been decorated with a title page illustration every year of its long life. In 1794, the plowman appeared, and you see him here on the right. And on the left also, trailing his hefty yoked oxen, the perfect image to attract the eye of the New England farmer. The second almanac frontispiece to appear is a lovely pastoral wood engraving. It began a 12-year run in 1797. Clothed in a flowing gown, this figure is Ceres, known to our antiquity-admiring forefathers as the Roman goddess of agriculture. Her Greek counterpart, Demeter, was celebrated by Homer as the bringer of seasons, who made fruit to spring up from the rich lands so that the whole wide earth was laden with flowers and leaves. Father Time, 1809. Father Time was most likely a biblical representation and meant to convey really a harsh warning to readers. God's wrath is pouring out onto the land. Reform your wicked ways, for he is not pleased, and the time of judgment is at hand. Now, Father Time was used for 190 years until the year 2000, when it was replaced with this engraving of Ceres by Randy Miller on the left. And you can see he was clearly inspired by the earlier 18th century almanac engraving. In her previous incarnation, which Miller had the opportunity to study at the archives in Dublin, New Hampshire, at her feet are various farm implements, and we can see them so much more clearly now. The pitchfork, the scythe. Isn't that great? In his Miller's version here, Ceres is still beneath the tree amidst the hoes and the sickles. But here she's pouring water from a pitcher onto a flowering bush. And here, oh, look at this, charming, still that figure of the plowman. It really connects us to that first almanac, doesn't it? Hey, but let's face it, the biggest, coolest thing about the Old Farmer's Almanac is the weather predictions. Now, here's my husband's favorite meteorologist, Pete Bouchard. If you're ever at my house and Pete is not on TV because of a vacation day or something, good grief, the drama. Where's Pete? He cries, as if the very orbit of our planet will be affected by the absence of this wonderful weather guy. Do you have a favorite weatherman? Okay, so nobody's perfect, but the Old Farmer's Almanac has long trumpeted that 80% accuracy rate I told you about earlier. A few years ago, Penn State meteorologist Paul Knight and some colleagues examined the Almanac's weather predictions from 1996 to 2004. Some months were pretty good and some months were pretty bad, he said. As for the claim of 80% accuracy, it is just not possible to do that consistently, he said. But even if they take exception to some of the Almanac's assertions, some of those same hard-nosed weather professionals have a real soft spot for the Almanac. They might scoff at the Almanac's talk of sunspots and secret formulas, but they praised its blend of astronomical data and folksy wisdom. One TV weatherman even credited the Old Farmer's Almanac with sparking his interest in the weather. I was always one of the first people to go steal a look at what the winter would be like for my region, because I love winter weather and I grew up in New England, he said. Anything that could get me more interested in the weather when I was a young boy worked in favor of my getting into this career. The secret to their weather forecasts has been speculated on for some time. Is it true that there's a little black box with secrets of how to predict the weather? Is weather folklore the secret? Here's a fun little video that answers that question. Let's watch it together now.
Here in the offices of the Old Farmer's Almanac in Dublin, New Hampshire, there's a small black box about the size of a shoebox. And inside, I'm told, are notes on the formula for making the forecasts. Nobody's let me see that.
Secret. It's a secret what's in there. It's just part of the legend. Yeah, that black box has been around since I've been here. And my uncle, Rob Sagendorf, who purchased the Old Farmer's Almanac in 1939, I think he inherited that black box. So how far back it actually goes, if it goes to Robert V. Thomas, who founded the Old Farmer's Almanac in 1792, I'm not sure, but it's old.
'75, '76, '77. $4,009, 4,010, 4,011. $94,016, 94,017. $766,014.
Yeah, I think you're right. That looks like a squirrel's nest, all right.
I haven't seen what's inside the box. It's locked, and I'm not sure that anybody can get it open anymore.
Inside there is a lot of information. A lot of my uncle's scribblings are in there, and his interpretation of what Robert V. Thomas, how he did the weather forecasting. It's in there.
I've never seen those notes. The box is locked, and I've never opened it. Nobody to my knowledge has ever seen those notes. But I can tell you that today, in the past several years, of course, for several decades, we've been using all the latest satellite data for making our forecasts. And we use 3 scientific disciplines.
$700. What? Now you tell me?
that was great. I love all the bits of folklore. Some of them I had heard of before, like the onion skin, but the corn husk, never heard of that. How fun. Since the Farmer's Almanac really was so much paid to attention to by farmers, and during my childhood, I know my mother referred to it for her garden and for recipes. So that made me think of this iconic painting. And I'm wondering, when you look at this, what do you see? What's going on in this picture? Okay, you're seeing a farmer, a very serious farmer, and he's with a female here. And it could be his wife, you're wondering, although she does seem to be younger than him. So you're wondering if that's his wife. And what do you see that makes you say that's a farmer? Oh, right, this pitchfork, right here, right in the front. He's holding that very solidly, isn't he? He's holding it with this weathered hand. This is a man who knows what it is to work with his hands. And perhaps you also are noticing, some of you, these pants, these farmer pants, these bib overalls. That's great. What more can we find? Okay, he is looking right at us, isn't he, with that serious expression. But the woman with him is looking in a different direction, off to the side, and I'm not sure. Maybe what she's looking at are children playing. Maybe they're posing and she's thinking, oh gosh, I have to get to those kids. You're noticing that she has this apron on with this rickrack. Perhaps she sewed that herself to protect her dress in this beautiful cameo. Did any of you have cameos? I know my grandmother had one that I loved to look at and touch when I was a girl. What more can we find? Oh, the house. Isn't that house something? So you're noticing this house in the background, in that window that's almost like a church window. It's dark. There's a curtain covering it, but the room is very dark, although we can see that it's a bright, sunny day. The house is dark. What more? What more can we find? The trees. Okay, so wherever this place is, there certainly is a lot of land, and you're seeing this barn back here. What may be a barn, this red building, and these trees that are like lollipop trees, aren't they? Very stylized, just these beautiful circles of green. Yeah, so this could be somewhere more rural. They're not in the city, that's for sure. What more can we find? Oh, some of you are noticing the plants on the porch here. And maybe you have a plant like this or have heard of this one. I have one of these at my house. It's called mother-in-law's tongue is one name for it. That's the common name. And I always thought that was really funny. And I was told a long time ago that it would be the perfect plant for me because this plant doesn't die and it doesn't stop growing. And apparently that's the joke there, just like a mother-in-law's tongue that doesn't stop talking. Now, I will say my mother-in-law is a lovely woman, so I would never joke about that with her. What more can we find? Okay, you're wondering about the time of year. It's sunny and bright, but he has a jacket on and she's wearing a dress with long sleeves. So perhaps this is late summer getting into early fall, and those trees are just barely, maybe there are a few hints of the color changing a little bit. So just bare hints of color with the trees changing. And it makes you wonder if they are in New England or a place where the trees change color, that this could be late September, early October before that happens. You know, this is an image that most of us know by heart, don't we? It's a man menacingly holding this pitchfork. Some people say menacingly. This woman stands by in what seems to be her Sunday best, stiff as a rod. Behind them is this timber house with that eerie black window. This is American Gothic, the icon of American art, one of the icons. It's an austere emblem of rural life in the Midwest of the US. It was painted by Grant Wood in 1930, and this artwork has become the subject of study and parody throughout the art world for nearly 100 years. American Gothic illustrated the style of Carpenter's Gothic architecture. So here we see in the painting, in the middle we're seeing the sketch, and over here, the actual house that inspired Grant Wood. Wood was first inspired to tackle the subject of this painting after making a drive through the town of Eldon in Iowa. He saw the white house that features in the background of the painting, built in the Carpenter's Gothic style of architecture in the 1880s. The style was an American take on Victorian Gothic, prevalent across 20th century rural America. It is from this reference that the painting takes its name. The Gothic refers to the architecture. This old-fashioned provincial house became Wood's foundation for building a believable story. Now, Wood set out to find a couple of models who looked as though they might live in such a house. He had the idea that it would be populated by severely straight-laced characters. After finding two suitable models, neither of whom knew each other, by the way, he deliberately dressed them in the type of old-fashioned clothing that he thought suited this austere architectural style, along with the props that suggest rural work. The real woman was, in fact, Grant Wood's sister, and the man was a dentist from his hometown. To blend the figures with the building, he thinned and elongated their faces. You can see that here, the difference in her face. He really elongated it. This strange distortion makes the painting feel particularly creepy. We can see that again here. He even mirrored the couple's dark clothing with that darkened window behind them. The painting illustrated rural American values. Wood made this painting, like I said, in 1930, at the beginning of the Great Depression, and he argued that one of his main aims was to create a reassuring image of stability and security during a time of national disruption. He said he was celebrating ingrained old-fashioned rural values such as family, land, work, and religious piety. Because these values were so out of step with the rise in modernity and cosmopolitan life, the painting became the subject of much ridicule. Let's watch one more video that tells us a bit more about this iconic painting.
How did American Gothic get so famous? It's two people, a house, and some sky. Isn't it a little overrated? Just a second. Put down the 3-time pitchfork. So I understand that Grant Wood made an incredible painting. You can see it in all the little details, like how the pitchfork's lines are repeated in the house and Farmer's shirt, or how there are complementary patterns in the window drapes and the woman's dress. The painting is technically complex. Nobody would have guessed Grant Wood's painting would be a huge success. Born near Anamosa, Iowa, he grew up in the big city, Cedar Rapids. But in the 1920s, he frequently traveled to Europe. Impressionism was an inspiration. So was pointillism. Older artists influenced him too. He said Jan van Eyck's look changed his art. I think you can see it in these long, flat faces that Wood drew himself. The The result of that traveling was a guy who was half European artiste, half Iowan farm boy. So when Wood passed by this house in Eldon, Iowa, he saw something. Something Gothic, that weird, slightly ominous window, and something American, too. He made sketches of the house and enlisted his dentist and, yeah, his sister as models for the painting. Wood completed it in 1930. That year, the painting made its way to the Chicago Art Institute for a contest. But it got bronze, third place. The first mention in the New York Times was dwarfed by an ad for stomach acid medication. Wood sold American Gothic to the museum for $300. That's the big question. How did a third place $300 painting featuring a dentist and the artist's sister turn into an icon? America changed a lot from 1880 to 1920. This chart shows all the jobs. The big one to notice is agriculture. In 1880, almost half of all Americans were on the farm. Now let's go to 1920. Agriculture went from 48% to just 25%. In 1880, about 30% of Americans lived in cities. By 1920, it had jumped to more than half. America was split between city and country. Main Street was a hit novel that was basically about how small towns stunk. American Gothic was perfectly balanced for this big, nasty fight. Some city people saw the couple as the bourgeoisie. Some country people saw them as authentic Americans. Grant Wood knew what he was doing. This is Grant Wood's 1935 self-portrait, Return from Bohemia. He's trying to look like a solid Iowa artist. But he was always bohemian, too. In 1932, Wood painted Daughters of the Revolution. He said it was his only satire, an American myth blocked by women clinking their teacups. What the satirists might not realize is that when Grant Wood painted his sister and his dentist in front of a house in Eldon, Iowa, he was doing the same thing.
This painting was a major breakthrough for Grant Wood. I think you got that from the video. He was previously an unknown 39-year-old aspiring artist living in the attic of a funeral home carriage house with his mother and sister. And now it's time for one of my favorite features, fun facts. Did you ever wonder about the hole in the corner of the Old Farmer's Almanac? Readers discovered how useful the almanac was in their daily lives, and they wanted it close at hand. They'd nail a hole into the corner to hang the almanac in a handy spot, like the barn or kitchen, or even the outhouse. It cost over $40,000 for the almanac to punch a hole in the over 4 million printed copies of the almanac today. After all the almanacs are printed, they're left with nearly 400 million teeny tiny little pieces of paper. That's a lot of paper. They do end up recycling all that paper, although they would make great confetti. In 1942, the FBI apprehended a German spy on a train going into New York City's Penn Station. The spy had landed on Long Island, New York from a U-boat the night before. The impact of this event was felt all the way to Dublin, New Hampshire, because the Old Farmer's Almanac was found in the German's coat pocket. It was the 1942 edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac. The U.S. government speculated that the Germans were using the almanac for weather forecasts, which meant that the book was indirectly supplying information to the enemy. Perhaps he just picked it up in the train station and liked the jokes. The 11th editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, Rob Sagendorf, was always of the opinion that it was the tide tables that the Germans had used. But our government then decided that either the almanac should be banned or the word forecast should be eliminated. In any event, Sagendorf managed to get the government to agree that there would be no violation of the Code of Wartime Practices for the American Press if the almanac featured weather indications instead of calling them forecasts. It was a close call that almost ruined the almanac's perfect record of continuous publication. Before that, in 1858, Abraham Lincoln may have used a copy of the Old Farmer's Almanac to argue the innocence of his client, William Armstrong, who was on trial for murder in Beardston, Illinois. This is fascinating to me. Lincoln used the almanac to refute the testimony of an eyewitness who claimed he had seen the crime by the light of the moon on August 29th in 1857. Today, the almanac is still produced in Dublin, New Hampshire. During its 228-year existence, it has had 13 editors. The most recent editor is Janice Stillman, who we heard earlier in a video, and she's the first female editor of the publication. She continues with the tradition set by the original publisher, Robert B. Thomas, who probably put it best when he said, "Our main endeavor is to be useful, but with a pleasant degree of humor." Now, I didn't even get into the horoscopes, the ads and puns and jokes, because our time is running out. I'd like to share this bit of sage advice from the very first Old Farmer's Almanac. If your neighbor's hens or hogs or cattle have trespassed onto your crops and you can get no satisfaction, don't rush into a lawsuit about it. Think it over carefully. The best lawyers advise clients to settle contentions out of court, sometimes even to buy a peace, rather than to undergo the cost and worry of a contest. Wow, that advice comes from 1793, and I believe that's advice we could still hold on to today. I hope you enjoyed our time together today. Thank you for once again giving me the opportunity to spend this time with you. I'll leave you with this fun fact from the 2015 issue. The slowest spinning object in the known universe is the nearest planet, Venus. A person could walk faster than it rotates. Venus rotates very slowly on its axis. One day on Venus lasts 243 Earth days. So people, don't you fret a bit about walking slowly. I'm going to call it my Venus walk from now on. Thanks again to our host friends at AgeSpan. And our sponsor, Right at Home Boston North, providing the support people need to stay in their home. I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. What a great time I had looking up things about the Old Farmer's Almanac and recalling how much I enjoyed reading through it as a child and an adult. I wish you all the best. Know that you are not alone. We're thinking of you. Please reach out to either AgeSpan or Right at Home. If you would like any information or need help, we want to be there for you. Take care, everyone. Great to see you, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, my friends. See you soon.